Welcome back. We're just going to continue with Ecclesiastes today. I started out with some thoughts from King Solomon, continuing the Eye of the Needle series. Just a reminder, this isn't just about, as the verse states, that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle, which is a small gate in the wall of Jerusalem, where camels had to go in kind of on their knees to carrying their goods and stuff. These are some thoughts about how to avoid it being so hard to get through the eye of the needle per se, as people often question the wealthy, the rich, the business people. Do you serve God or do you serve money? All of that discussion or argument, and what I'm trying to do is just kind of create a pathway of understanding so that people who are having trouble or inner conflict about this kind of issue, I'd like to just provide some common sense. So here, I want to lead a person in a pathway towards, well, how do I get through the eye of the needle if I'm a person of means? The other side of the coin is, and I've mentioned this before, pardon the pun, is for those in spiritual leadership or those in a spiritual sort of perspective, how do they engage somebody of wealth and means without it being a jealous or envious comparison? How do we calm some of these divisive discussions down, whereby we can sort of find at the conclusion a harmony, a connection, fellowship without condition, in the sense of the silent rules per se. So these are some of the motivations behind this series. Today, I want to talk to you just a little bit more about Ecclesiastes. I've been studying in it, reading it over and over again. And today we're starting in chapter 4, verse 9 to 12. And it says in the subheadings of this chapter, the value of friendship. Okay? So you want to know how to get through the eye of the needle. Well, you can't do it on your own. The value of good friendship is important, which, that's the term of fellowship, is meant to be a higher quality of friendship, right? So that we endure together, we struggle, but we also, remain victorious together. Now, some people have various ideas on what that looks like. I'm just simply stating that from the Bible, it's important, right? And as people that are achievers and they've gone and done some really interesting things, one of the things that a wealthy person who has their ego in check will tell you is, I could not have done it alone. So that's just an encouragement. So Solomon writes here in chapter 4, verses 9 to 12, the value of friendship. He says, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. So it's like a multiplication of results. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, right? But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Verse 12, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And in other translations, a threefold cord is not easily broken. I've always taken that to mean, there's two people with the power of the Lord, a threefold cord is not easily broken. But the concept is that it's a combined strength. The strength of the cord is multiplied by 3 strands interwoven together. That's like a rope, right? So it's good to have friends. I've said that multiple times, even on this channel and other videos. It's good to have friends. It's good to have authentic friends. I recently had a meeting. My wife and I had a dinner with a couple of friends that we enjoy very much. And one of the things we had talked about was, mutual respect and reciprocity is a really good indicator of a quality friendship. And it's spoken in other sort of arenas where you're biblically teaching, it says keep your accounts short. So it's, don't leave debts lingering. Keep your accounts short and be quick to toss, like a volleyball game, be quick to toss that ball back. So this is the power of friendship. Now, I didn't plan on this today in the sense of, well, because of that meeting. No, it's just in combination of where we're at in Ecclesiastes. But as far as getting through the eye of the needle, it's really important that, if it truly is about humility and capacity and walking humbly before God, well, it's good that we have other people to bounce ideas off of, or as Proverbs, iron sharpens iron, which is the friction between friendship to help sharpen each other up. It ends up being, although rather chafing or uncomfortable experience, it ends up being a very healthy experience. So Solomon is writing here the value of friendship, right? But it goes on now. There's in chapter 5, just right after that, and I thought I'd conquer kind of 3 things here today. But it talks about fulfilling your vows to God. This is something I learned very, very early on, is that God is very interested in how we govern our integrity, right? If you believe that you walk under Christ and you believe that you are developing yourself, you'll know that the New Testament, most of the New Testament, is all about, first of all, relationship with Jesus, salvation, right? Walking humbly before God and loving one another. But all of the stuff that surrounds that, mostly Paul's writings, is about developing yourself under the Lord, under Christ, developing your character, right? So I don't need to go into a whole, section of that. But the point is that a lot of times you'll read in the New Testament how to govern yourselves in light of common culture, licentious behavior, poor behavior, those kinds of issues, right? So in chapter 5, verse 1 to 4, and I'll make a couple of comments on this. First one, it says, guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. So, there have been days when you walk reverently into a place where people are gathered. I'm hesitant to say that modern church is the house of the Lord, because that's an Old Testament concept. But what I am saying is the congregation of faith. Let's just put it that way. And you walk in and you tend to want to be the quietest, because that's a sign of reverence and, for where you're at, and saying, Lord, your presence, all that. But guard your steps when you go into the house of God. Now, this is Old Testament. It's the temple, right? Guard your steps. Understand where you are at and conduct yourself accordingly is what it suggests to me. Go near to listen than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. So go near to listen, to take in, to understand, to discern, to be a part, but not necessarily try to, push things in a foolish way. Verse 2, do not be quick with your mouth, do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. Now, there's a season where I've walked through not long ago where, you kind of have an opinion on things, but it's better to walk silently and walk in a silent discernment or a silent authority and allow the Lord to go ahead of you and fight the battle or deal with the situation. And this was a very graphic lesson that personally, as a communicator, I had to walk with God in. And I just said, okay, I'm going to just not say anything, or I'm going to allow things to play out. And as they usually do, that, the idea of sin will find you out. Poor behavior will eventually be exposed, right? Verse 3 says, a dream comes when there are many cares, and the many words mark the speech of a fool. So it's funny, if people criticize social media, whatever they feel about it. And it's, when we're all saying, hey, don't get hooked on social media, but here we are on social media. It's kind of a funny thing. Here, it's the same. Now, I'm a communicator. I'm doing some Bible expository or some Bible teaching with people that are watching, of whom I'm very grateful for. And it's saying here that many words mark the speech of a fool. I don't know if it's the sheer volume of words because I'm a communicator, or is it the rashness of quick opinion, or you're reacting to something and you're going to say something that you may regret, right? So I'll take it as a both and, not just one or the other. So it marks the speech of a fool. Many words, utters many words, right? So I'm watching out there these days, and I'm paying attention at what I see. Verse 4, this is a key statement in this passage. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He has no pleasure in fools. Just let that sink in. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to make a vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it. Now, in sections of life, we're all guilty of this. Now, this would be a measure of integrity. In the business world, that's a measure of integrity. Will you do what you say you are going to do? Then there's the concept of hypocrisy. I'm gonna just placate you right now with my words, but really in my heart, I'm not even there, right? It's kind of a dualistic behavior, and I don't think it's pleasing to God. It says he has no pleasure in fools, right? Do not let your mouth lead you into sin, and do not protest to the temple messenger. My vow was a mistake, right? Oh, I made a mistake. I don't, and that is, there's an issue right now in certain sections of the church where they're talking about a cover-up culture. This is a cover-up culture concept. Is do not protest to the temple messenger that, I just made a mistake. Why should God be angry at what you say and destroy the work of your hands? If you've done it honestly and authentically, if you've done something, then you got nothing to hide, basically, is what I'm interpreting here. But this idea that I want to deflect, something negative has come at me, or something I perceive as negative is coming at me, I'm going to deflect. I'm going to, it's their fault, or it's that happened, and there's all kinds of deflection, and that's a part of our sinful nature. We're going to try. It's like in the garden, Adam and Eve, after they took a bite and God said, what did you do? And Adam says, well, it's this woman you gave me. You see, it's a deflection of responsibility, a deflection of bearing the burden of accountability. And so that's what I'm interpreting in this particular passage. So the idea of fulfilling your vow, you say, how do I get through the eye of the needle? I'm actually giving you some inspiration here through scripture on how to do it well, instead of trying to scare you that you're doing it wrong. Well, this is not saying you're doing it all wrong. He's giving some encouragement that this is the better way to behave. So if you make a promise to somebody, fulfill it. Fulfill your promises, because I know in leadership in years past, this has been one of the strongest measuring sticks of our integrity in leadership, is our consistency. And do we fulfill what we say? I can say one thing when it's convenient. I've run many meetings, and whether it's Sunday morning or whether it's Friday night or wherever I was, I ran many meetings, and I always knew that if you're not careful in what you say, people will hold you accountable to that, because if what you say on one day is different than what you do on the next, people are going to observe that, and they may observe it silently. So instead of getting caught in that and being forced to confess, why not actually just understand and agree on how to do it well? Raise the bar and decide in your heart, as a matter of conviction, I want to raise the bar. And that doesn't mean that you're behaving better than anybody else. It just means that between you and Jesus, you can say, like Paul one day, it's no longer I that live, but Christ that lives in me. It's the character of God that creates and molds and shapes, and I reflect the character of Christ. Right? It's that way. So some very good thoughts about that. I hope that you are edified in that. But here is what Jesus is saying about the friend, the first reference. So I'm connecting the dots from an Old Testament principle and writing, and here's the New Testament application and reality. Okay? Because I find oftentimes we're dwelling a lot on Old Testament, but we're not balancing it with New Testament relevancy. I am a New Testament believer. I am a follower of Jesus. I have the Lord in my life. I believe in the activity and the gifts of the Holy Spirit when it comes to encouraging people. So there has to be a balance of understanding on why the shift from Old Covenant to New Covenant. Old Testament, New Testament. Old law, fulfilled law, right? So here's what Jesus says about it's good to have friends. Ecclesiastes 4. John 13, 34 and 35. A new commandment I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. So if you have aught with your brother, it's probably a good idea to talk it through. If you feel that you've been wronged, or you feel that you've got something left unsettled or unopened, it's probably good that you avail yourself to make it through, right? Whatever the outcome. If you're afraid of the outcome, then you got to look in the mirror, right? But this is what Jesus said when it comes to developing fellowship with one another. I have some very good lifelong friends that I wouldn't trade for anything, right? But those kinds of friends are few and far between. But as far as walking in a community of faith, whatever expression that may take, the fact is that you've got to be willing to walk through the harder conversations and come out the other side without fear of retribution or betrayal. Why? Because the willingness to bring something to a resolve suggests to me that, well, that's their love in action, right? We're not leaving this left unopened. And nobody is absolved from this aspect of relationship. Sometimes relationships can be tough. But this is what Jesus said. They will know me by this, 35, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another, because you're reflecting his character in the world. You are the light in the darkness. So if you're behaving in ways that aren't necessarily respectable or fruitful, that's on you, and it's probably good to look in the mirror. I look in the mirror quite often. And I know as a person that coaches other people or that consults or ministers to other people, I sometimes, in my perspectives and my words, I can be part of the problem. Are you comfortable with that issue? Are you comfortable with admitting that? And what would you be willing to do about that given the opportunity, right? Okay, so here's another one. And again, this is just in my reading for Ecclesiastes, okay? Just so that you know. In the second one, when it talks about, the many words of a fool, right? Fool. James chapter 1, verses 18 to 20, or more 19 and 20. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So I mentioned earlier in the video that personally I walked through a season where I had to practice what they call quiet authority. And I'm working on it. I'm a communicator, and I like to try to work things out. My wife and I have this relationship balance where I'm a processor, I'm a verbal processor, and I want to get that, out. However, there are seasons when the Lord is saying, trust me more than you trust your own ability. Trust me more than what you think you know is you have a case. So I say, okay, Lord, I want to trust you more. So I walk for a real season in quietness, and just, things happen around you or whatever's going on, that you may find is, personal, or a personal attack, or, whatever you're discomforted with. Sometimes you'll have to walk the quiet backcountry road, and you'll have to just give it to the Lord. But when it comes to working with people, this is what they would call in the business world active listening, right? So you are listening first, asking questions, instead of listening first, making declarations. If you're asking questions, you're trying to mine out that person's intelligence, their emotions. You're trying to get them to express it before you make any kind of prescriptive declarations or descriptive instructions, right? Far too often, we, in the helping professions anyway, you can get caught in, you can finish somebody's sentences and you get caught dominating the experience or the conversation because you've seen this 100 times before. You just want to get to the answer, right? Which none of us are, none of us are absolved from that. We fall into that problem. And verse 20, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So reining in and holding it in check, it's kind of like submitting every thought to Christ, right? Submitting everything to the Lord. So, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Let it get into your character. Let it change you. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. This now is an internal decision, and it's there to help you increase the quality of your relationships, right? Be slow to anger. Don't let the fuse be too short, because you'll tend to speak like a fool. You will utter many words in defense or in reaction, and you will have given away your place, position, your opinion, whatever, and it'll cause you more trouble than it's worth, right? So, and trust me, I've been on the wrong end of false accusation, and you've had to make a choice. You've had to make a choice on how you're going to behave, and usually that's the quiet walk along the road. And you say, Lord, teach me, teach me. I want to learn how to be better. I want to learn how to be further. There was a statement in my studies of this section here where the commentator said, the definition of a real fool is not one who can't learn, but one who refuses to learn. I hope this helps you. I hope it brings you peace, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks everybody for watching today. We really appreciate your support. Please don't forget to like the video with a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, as it will help us get to that great 300 number we're targeting. As well, don't forget to hit the bell icon, as it will remind you whenever a video comes out so you don't miss a thing. Thanks again for watching.